Evolving within the infinite system. An essay by James Mahu. Question: does the infinite self evolve? Is the infinite self the soul? And is the infinite self the creator, or simply one with the creator? Answer: our personal experience, derived from our local universe, is wholly unique. An event can happen to 2 people or 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, and the interpretation of that event is not identical, and in some cases, can be quite polar in nature. The other thing I would say is that knowledge evolves. The old saying that we cannot cross the river in the same place twice is an apt description of this sentiment. Spacetime duality and language ensures the truth of that adage. So, the concept of soul varies in culture, and while it is not an event, but a state of consciousness, it is even more prone to subjectivity and personal experience. Moreover, because the soul is invisible to our human self, and its mere existence is called into question by luminaries of science and philosophy, it is a hard flame to kindle in human culture at large. Soul is a concept. It is an abstract concept. To simplify it, one needs to remind themselves that they live within a reality called spacetime duality. And the duality is vital to understand, because it hides the infinite self. We know that for every expression of one polarity, the other polarity exists to counterbalance it. In other words, if the finite exists, then the infinite exists. If matter exists, then the soul exists, if we describe it as invisible energy. Now, for your first question. Evolution is a significant part of the spacetime dimensions in which finite biologics live. The temporal evolves in spacetime duality, even when it is beset with inertia and entropy. In a sense, evolution is a substitute for the concept of temporal change. The infinite evolves in spacetime very differently, as it is not simply the modulation of change of a sovereign, finite human being. Its evolution is a system of oneness and unity. We, as an infinite self, evolve our interpretations and expressions in spacetime duality. Therefore, the infinite self evolves. Remember that the finite self is the infinite self in human clothes. It is not that they are 2 different creatures occupying one body, heart, and mind. The human, finite self is the interface of the infinite self to create its finite self's local universe. The infinite self is the finite self in spacetime duality, principally occupying the 4th and 5th dimensions of feelings and thoughts. The prime creator is the source of all the sources, and these sources are the infinite being associated with the planet and all life therein. Within the infinite being there is an infinite self that is a sovereign lens of the infinite being. When the infinite self is in a physical body, it is then a finite self, yet still a part of the infinite system. The way to think of it is that there is an infinite system of prime creator, multiversal, infinite being, galactic planetary, a sovereign infinite self, individuated infinite being, a sovereign finite self, human interface for the infinite self, and a local universe from which all the previous elements derive reality. These components constitute one system, and this entire system evolves. The finite self is not the only aspect that evolves, unless the perspective is the finite self. In other words, the finite self does not perceive an evolution of the infinite self, because it does not perceive this infinite system. It has no benchmark, calibration, data, or sensory input that can transcribe the infinite system to the finite self and its local universe. Evolution is a system, as I said before, and by definition, a system is co-created and co-sustained by the system itself. Understanding the consciousness of the prime creator is not relevant to the finite self, yet, as the system evolves in the finite world, it evolves in the infinite too, and this co-learning is system-wide, and it's always in dynamic interaction. Everything we understand is shared. Everything we're confused about, that also is shared. Our interpretations of, and expressions into, our local universe, is the principal way we evolve our local universe, our finite self, our infinite self, the infinite being of our shared planet, and the prime creator. The product of this evolution is source intelligence, because that is the mechanism by which we are interconnected as one and all. One could say that the infinite system produces a byproduct called source intelligence, and that intelligence is what knits all of us together as one. One could also argue that this process is not an evolution so much as a natural course of a design. The prime creator designed it this way, but added the key ingredient of free will to the master algorithm. Free will of all sovereigns, species, biologics, and forms of spacetime duality. However, all of us are part of a designed, integral system that is multiversal. It is not one local universe, it is an infinite multiverse, and in such a place, one moment is our local universe. One moment, yet, in that one moment, all is held in a multiverse of dimensions. We exist in these other dimensions always. It is not something we go to or leave from. We are always in these other dimensions, or we could not exist as a finite being. If we are finite, we are infinite. That is duality in action. In reality, we are evolving our finite ability to live simultaneously in the infinite system, and our sovereign, unique, local universe. This is where the concept of imperfect arises. We become aware of this evolutionary purpose and we strive to live in both worlds, to refashion our beliefs and consequent behaviors, and we fall short of our expectations. The human ways rise in us, else we feel disassociated with our species. However, it is initially the intention we hold, as a result of our beliefs, that truly matters. We are not measurable performance units of the infinite system. We are sovereign creators of learning for the infinite system. As for definitions of soul and infinite self, I am suggesting that the infinite self is an aspect of the infinite system. This infinite system has never been defined as a human soul. The human soul has been defined as an eternal aspect of God or an intelligent universe. The soul survives the death of the temporal body, and lives in a heavenly state either as an angelic presence or returning to oneness with our Creator. This is how we collectively define the soul. There are variations of this to be sure, but if we intermixed them all together and looked at the cross-section, we would see these three ideas emerge as dominant. The soul incarnates and when the body dies returns to heaven, assuming it is saved. The second idea is that we become one with our Creator. And the third, and perhaps the most popular, is the idea of reincarnation. That the soul recycles itself across spacetime, applying what it has learned to earn a better foothold on life everlasting as a saint, guru, or master. We are part of an infinite system that is learning to live in the finite realms of emotions, thoughts, and physical actions as our infinite self, and ultimately as a realized part of our infinite system. The thread that binds the system is the intelligence of unconditional love in the local and non-local multiversal realms. We are not the Creator unless we desire to become aware of the Creator as the infinite being. We are not the finite self unless we desire to be the finite self. When one lives in a system of interconnection, it is a choice where they place their attention. The choice, however, is conditioned by the finite self in the fourth dimension. Our beliefs circumscribe our behavior, and when I use the term behavior, it is in its broadest application. Behavior is as much a thought, an imaginative foray into a thought experiment, as it is an action or word. The distinction between behavior and belief is marginal, and only relevant in the physical domain. Behavior is the frontier of the infinite system. This is where the value of learning is heightened and amplified. Our beliefs evolve. Understanding our beliefs evolves. Our behavioral reflection of our beliefs evolve. The infinite system evolves with our evolving beliefs and behaviors, And it does so without a single judgment founded in the duality in which the behaviors are interpreted or expressed. In this specific way, we are creators. We create learning for the infinite system. We are using the inputs of a design system and our free will in order to produce an output. And the output is evolving our beliefs and behaviors in service to our collective infinite system. I realize this sounds clinical in its tone, but do remember that the very basis of this system is unconditional love of an interconnected intelligence we cannot possibly imagine. The infinite system, as it relates to the prime creator, is not what the sovereign, individuated, infinite consciousness can experience. We are not that. Not because we are excluded, but because we are sovereign and integral. We are individuated from, and we are interconnected to, one another. It is our part in the system to play. We are never simultaneously all parts of the system. We can become aware of the prime creator, but this is not the same as being the prime creator. It's wise to understand the infinite system. To know that we are a part of it first and foremost, and that finite part of us is the human glove that the infinite wears in spacetime duality in the early part of the 21st century on planet Earth. We each localize the infinite system in spacetime. In a sense, we are like miners of understanding for the infinite system to evolve. What we mine is our interpretation of our local universe and how we express ourselves into it. While we localize the infinite system non-localizes us. We can feel this. We can touch its edges. We can imagine it. We can peer inside this infinite system and realize we live within it. We can align to it. Our finite self, after all, is a part of it. Our infinite self is a part of it. We are already in it. We never left it. It's time to rejoice in that realization.